a weapon that kills without a mark, a massacre buried by praise, and a secret committee that dragged the truth into the light. This is a journey through the hidden corridors of power, where the unthinkable was not only possible, it was operational. Where files were stamped secret, witnesses were silenced by fear, and the line between war and crime blurred in plain sight. The revelations are not rumor. They are recorded, testified, and in some cases held up to the cameras for all to see. Begin in Vietnam, March 1968, in a village named My Lai. American soldiers arrived expecting a search and destroy mission. They found no enemy fighters. Yet what followed was a horror beyond words. 504 Vietnamese civilians were killed, women and children among them. Acts of assault took place so depraved that they defy description here. And after the killing, the truth was smothered. Reports claimed the dead were Viet Cong. Officers were praised. The story was recast as a victory. But truth has a way of finding a voice. Former soldiers spoke out. The cover crumbled a year later. In the storm that followed, Lieutenant William Calley was charged with directing killings. He was found guilty of premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison. Yet he served 3.5 years of house arrest after intervention from the highest office in the land. The My Lai massacre became a symbol of a war already criticized and a test of a nation's moral compass. Those same years pulled back another curtain. In Washington, a Senate panel took on the most powerful intelligence agencies in the United States. It would be known by the name of its chair, Senator Frank Church. The Church Committee opened file after file and found plans that read like fiction. Plots to kill foreign leaders, including Fidel Castro. Covert programs to infiltrate and disrupt political movements at home. The FBI program, called COINTELPRO, targeted civil rights leaders, anti-war activists, and many others. The CIA's Project Mockingbird harnessed influence within newsrooms. The National Security Agency ran a watch list program known as MINARET, with the help of phone and cable companies. The committee found mind control experiments under the MKULTRA umbrella. It found Project MKNAOMI, a joint effort with military research to store and deliver biological and chemical agents, as well as devices to deploy them. It found a secret weapon that looked like it belonged in a spy novel. A dart gun that could fire a frozen poison. The dart would pierce the skin with hardly a sting, melt away, and leave almost no trace, while the toxin triggered a fatal heart attack. Years later, images would show a witness holding that weapon during a hearing, the truth sitting there in the plain light of day. The Church Committee did more than reveal. It forced reform. It led to new oversight of the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA. It encouraged rules that would shape intelligence work for years. In the White House, President Gerald Ford issued an order that barred political assassination by United States personnel. It was a line in the sand drawn after a parade of lines had been crossed. History does not hide only in America. Look to Europe in 1933 and watch a fire devour the Reichstag in Berlin. The building that housed Germany's parliament burned. The government blamed communists. A Dutchman named Marinus van der Lubbe was arrested. Adolf Hitler seized the moment. He used the fire to strip opposition, to push through sweeping new powers in the election that followed. It was the match that lit a larger blaze of tyranny. In the shadow of a later war, another secret took root. Operation Gladio. In the aftermath of the Second World War, Western governments planned clandestine missions across Europe in case Soviet tanks rolled west. These networks were a project of cooperation between the intelligence services of the United States and allies, with NATO and the Western Union involved. The idea was simple: build stay-behind teams, train them to act as resistance if the Soviets invaded. In practice, it meant safe houses, caches, and training for sabotage, infiltration, even assassination. It meant alliances with hardline anti-communist groups that were ready to do dark work. Allegations later surfaced that some of those groups carried out violence. To this day, the United States Department of State has rejected the claim that the plan was designed to back terrorist groups. It maintains that Gladio was built only to resist a potential invasion. Back across the Atlantic, a different war gripped the United States. The war on alcohol. During Prohibition, bootleggers drained industrial alcohol and redistilled it to make illegal liquor. Federal law enforcement and regulators devised a plan to stop them. They ordered industrial alcohol to be spiked with toxic additives, methanol, benzene, chemicals that could not be filtered out by the kitchen chemists of the underworld. On one Christmas Eve in 1926, 60 people in New York fell ill after drinking poisoned liquor. 31 of them died. Over the years, countless others were sickened or killed by tainted alcohol. Some would say the FBI poisoned the bottle. Others point to a grim equation where policy turned a glass into a loaded weapon. Covert science appears again in MKNAOMI. It ran for much of the 50s and 60s and focused on chemical and biological weapons. The work stocked lethal and incapacitating agents. It designed delivery systems that could disperse gases and toxins. It researched ways to deploy agents and then deploy another chemical to sanitize the exit. After a memo surfaced, President Richard Nixon publicly renounced biological weapons in November 1969. Yet the very next year, a rogue scientist inside the CIA obtained a deadly shellfish toxin with help from a military unit. That toxin was hidden in a CIA lab, a quiet cache that defied the spirit of the presidential ban. Secrets can also be the story of a press kept quiet. The Manhattan Project built the first atomic bombs in the early 1940s. The very existence of the program was a secret held from the public and from allies who would one day become rivals. Soviet spies still found their way inside and ferried knowledge back to Moscow. At home, the United States implemented censorship during the war. It did not edit published stories, but it warned editors about what could not be printed. In 1944, a journalist wrote about a mysterious explosion he had witnessed on vacation in New Mexico. He guessed at a scientific facility. He named J. Robert Oppenheimer. He got the location wrong, but he was close enough to cause panic. At the request of Major General Leslie Groves, the Office of Censorship blocked that story and others. Groves even pressed the author to retract. He relented only when he learned that the writer had a son at the age when men were sent to war. Not all secrets hid behind foreign policy. Some hid in clinics and waiting rooms. In Tuskegee, Alabama, a public health study began in 1932. The subjects were poor African-American men. Many had never seen a doctor. Government researchers told them they were being treated for a condition called bad blood, a vague phrase that covered all manner of ailments. In truth, they were being watched to see what syphilis did to the human body when left untreated. Placebos were given. When penicillin became a proven cure, the men were never told. They received no real treatment. Some went blind. Others suffered terrible complications. A number died. Many of their spouses were infected and children were born carrying the disease. When the story finally broke, outrage brought the study to an end. Legal action followed, and in 1974 a settlement was reached. New rules were written for human subjects across the United States. Elsewhere, a false flag unfolded in the Middle East. In 1954, Israeli military intelligence ran a covert network in Egypt called Operation Susanna. Its members were young Egyptian Jews recruited to plant small bombs in American and British cultural centers, libraries, and post offices. The plan was to blame a local Islamist group and to discredit the Egyptian leader Gamal Abdel Nasser. Several devices exploded with no loss of life. The authorities caught the operatives. Trials led to executions in 2 cases and long prison terms in others. A minister in Israel, Pinhas Lavon, was implicated and forced to resign. For decades, the state denied involvement. As late as 2005, surviving members of the network received certificates of appreciation from Israel. A quiet acknowledgement of a loud mistake. In the 1980s, another scandal crossed oceans. The Iran Contra affair. The United States Congress had restricted support for rebels fighting the leftist Sandinista government in Nicaragua. Yet inside the National Security Council, officials found another route. They sold arms to Iran during a time of intense hostility, and they directed proceeds to the Contra insurgents. It was covert. It sidestepped the law. It came crashing down in 1986 when a supply plane was shot out of the sky over Nicaragua and a pilot was captured. The exposure shook Washington and painted a new portrait of power unbound. Between 1990 and 1991, as the Gulf War ended, veterans in the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and beyond reported unusual illnesses: chronic fatigue, muscle pain, rashes, cognitive difficulties, digestive problems, depression, and anxiety. In many cases, these symptoms were far more severe than those seen in veterans of earlier wars. Studies would examine exposure to nerve agents, smoke from burning oil, pesticides, and depleted uranium. Some initial reports denied a distinct syndrome. In the United Kingdom, the government resisted recognizing Gulf War syndrome for years. In 2005, the Ministry of Defense accepted that veterans had suffered at higher rates across a range of conditions, and that many faced reduced quality of life compared to those who did not deploy. Many claims were still rejected. Many veterans still waited. Finally returned to the city streets where secrets wore a smile. Operation Midnight Climax. It sounds like a joke. It was not. In the 1950s and 60s, the CIA built safe houses where paid escorts brought unwitting men for a night of supposed pleasure. Drinks were spiked with lysergic acid diethylamide. Subjects were watched through one-way glass. They were pressured to reveal secrets, pushed to see if they could be manipulated into crimes. Robbery. Assault. The goal was simple and chilling. Learn whether mind control was possible. Learn how to use drugs to break a person down and build them back up as something new. Hundreds of people were used in these experiments. Most never consented. As public scrutiny grew, the program ended, but not before a generation had been pulled into the dark. A massacre hidden beneath false reports. A committee showing a dart gun designed to kill without a trace. A pattern of power operating beyond the light. These are not rumors. They are chapters in a history that insists on being told. The lesson is not that secrecy exists. It is that oversight matters. It is that truth must be built case by case, document by document, even when those documents are stamped top secret. Because somewhere, someone is still pulling at a loose thread. And when it finally comes free, the whole garment of deception begins to fall.